Thank you. Thank you all for being here this evening. My name is Cam DeJong. I'm the state representative from Ward 2 here in Manchester, New Hampshire, and it's a distinct honor to be here tonight. We do have several distinguished guests with us in attendance, in addition to everyone here who's very distinguished. We have Senators Tom Du Bois from Manchester, Senator Jim Forsyth, Senator Andy Sanborn, and Senator Ray White. We also have this evening with us Representatives Tammy Simmons, Mike Ball, Phil Griazzo, and Matt Swink. So thank you all for being here tonight for this event. Tonight's town hall will consist of a short interview between myself and Dr. Paul. After, we will open the hall to your questions. We know that there are a lot of Ron Paul supporters here tonight, and we thank you very, very much for your support. But we want to encourage undecided voters to ask their questions first. Dr. Ron Paul, with us tonight, of course, is a 12-term congressman, and he is, without a doubt, the champion of liberty in the United States. There's so much I could say to introduce him myself tonight, and there's so much that some of us know, and the undecided voters will get to know tonight. But consistency, integrity, and just strict adherence to the Constitution is all it takes for me to say that I'm glad to call Dr. Paul my next president and a friend of mine, and I hope by the end of tonight you say the same. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Paul, you've been married for 53 years. How did you meet your wife?
Well, that's an interesting story, and I better make sure I got the numbers right because it's 54. But before I explain that little thing to you, I want to introduce two of my granddaughters. If they would stand, Lisa and Linda Paul. I did get a couple days off this weekend. I got in. Matter of fact, we had a wedding on this weekend. And their oldest sister got married, and we had, it was on Saturday night, and the rehearsal dinner was on Friday night. And, you know, grandparents are supposed to be to the rehearsals dinner. But then this guy, I think his name is Jay Leno, he talked me into going out there. But the family was very happy. They watched it, and so they didn't hold that against me for not being there. And anyway, we had a big weekend, and we are delighted to be here tonight, and thank you for coming. But the story about meeting my wife is a little bit different because my first date with her was when she was on her birthday, and she was 4 years old. It was no, that's incorrect. It was her fourth birthday. She was born on leap year on February 29th, so it was her 16th birthday, and we were in high school together. And it was one of these Sadie Hawkins Day dances, so the girls got to ask the boys, so that's how they got me there. But I tell people, well, you know, if they're on leap year, you only have to buy presents every 4 years, but I was straightened out rather quickly on that. So we were married in my senior year at college, and I knew by that time I was going to medical school, and I kid that I worked my way through medical school, but she worked my way through. I worked my way through college. She worked my way through medical school.
Dr. Paul, this year the deficit is $1.7 trillion. That's trillion with a T. And the debt is now $15 trillion. You recently unveiled a dramatic plan to balance the budget in 3 years. In the first year alone, you cut $1 trillion. Why are you so sure deep cuts will help the economy?
Because government spends too much money, and when government spends money, they have a tendency to waste it. And there's a big difference between government spending money and the people spending the money. Liberal economists, though, literally teach and preach the whole idea. It makes no difference. If the people won't spend the money, the government has to. And they use this silly argument. They say, even if the government spent money paying somebody to dig a hole in the ground and then pay another group to fill up the hole, it would be productive. Well, common sense tells us that kind of economics can't be productive. Because and people argue, well, if the government doesn't spend the money, then the money will come out of the economy and it won't be a stimulus. But the whole thing is, if the government doesn't spend the money, that means the money is left in your hands, and the people make wiser choices. Debt is the big problem. The debt burden is the real problem the whole world faces, and it comes as a consequence of the monetary system. Because if you didn't have the monetary system we have today, where governments can spend money and they can't tax enough or borrow enough, then they print this money. So this encourages a lot of debt. Finally, though, there's stimulus. You can't spend any more money. The debt is too big. Interest rates are so low that you can't lower interest rates. And everything the government does doesn't restore the confidence because of the debt burden. If an individual gets into so much debt, or a business gets into so much debt that they can't get their business to grow anymore because they spend all their time just paying for the debt and keeping up, the only way they can get growth again, or an individual or a family get growth in their economic well-being, is to get rid of their debt. And some people liquidate the debt by going bankrupt, but other people will say, I've gone too far. I have too many credit cards. I have too many cars. I have 2 houses, and I can't keep up. They have to change their way. They have to say, no more credit cards. I have to work harder. I have to pay down the debt. And then when that debt is liquidated, then they can see growth in their productive capacity and have economic growth. Governments don't want to do that because politically there's a little bit of annoyance, because generally the people don't want anything cut. And therefore, the politicians don't want to cut. They keep spending and spending until we get to the point where we are today, and it's just unbearable. And still today in Washington, the biggest problem there is, even though they're hearing the message from people like you that spending is too big, the deficit is too big, the debt is too big, there's no serious effort to do anything about it. They give lip service to it, but they talk about, well, the Congress should do this, and if they don't do it, we'll have a super committee, and they should do this. And even the proposals they talk about, they're not even touching on cutting anything. If the super committee, if we didn't pass a budget, the super committee was supposed to meet, and if they didn't come up with it, there was going to be an automatic cut of $1.5 trillion over 10 years, but none of it would start until 2013. And the amount of money that would be cut over 10-year periods, if they would do it, would be not even enough to cover the debt. Every month we run up $100 billion of debt. So it doesn't even touch it. So they're not serious about it. This is why I introduced this program, trying to emphasize the point that you just can't keep promising people we're going to spend money and deficits don't matter, but you have to cut. In my proposal, though, I try to do it with a plan that you don't put people out in the streets, the people who become very dependent on government, even though they should have never gotten that way. There's a lot of people, the elderly and the medical programs, that people are very dependent, and you can still work your way out of it if we as a country would change our attitude about what the ultimate goal of government is. To me, the goal of government should be very limited, and that is to protect your freedoms. But the big problem, though, is I tried to come up with cuts to balance the budget in 1 year, but most of the cuts come in the first year. That's $1 trillion in 1 year. But we have to have a changed attitude about what we should be doing as a country and as a government. And where I start, where I think it should be the easiest, if the people say, yes, it's too much and this debt is a problem, we need to change it, I go after overseas spending. And I would cut $500 billion from overseas spending. I'm sick and tired of people like you being drained to be the policemen of the world and get involved all around the world, all this foreign aid. So I just bring our troops home and get over and done with all these wars, and we could save a lot of money. The other savings comes from getting rid of 5 departments, and that's a fair start. And then also to go back to the budget levels of 2006. So that would be opposite of what they do in Washington. They have baseline budgeting, which guarantees this growth. And if they decrease the growth a little bit, they call it a cut. So I say that's, too much deception. So what you have to do is actually cut. I'd go back for almost all the programs to 2006. And government in 2006 wasn't too small then. It was plenty big enough. But that's what would have to be done. If not, the consequence is so serious. I mean, the debt will continue to explode. The printing of money will explode. You're going to have a lot more inflation. And no matter what the government does, it's not going to work. And we're sort of up against it right now because, the government keeps trying, but just think of how the standard of living is going down for so many people. Middle class is being diminished. Standard of living is going down. The people on Social Security, their prices are going up. So they are losing. So you can print money and keep passing it out. But if prices go up, you lose it all. And we're only at the beginning of this. You can't create trillions of dollars and think that won't have an effect. And so far, it's had a minimal effect, but it's going to go a lot worse. That's why I am convinced that you have to cut spending. And I don't see this as a sacrifice. People who have gotten the bailouts, yeah, they might have to sacrifice because I'm tired of bailing out people. We shouldn't be bailing out people. But if you get more of your freedoms back and you get a chance to have your taxes lower, of course, my goal is to get rid of the income tax. That wouldn't be a sacrifice. I think that would be a good thing for everybody. So, but if there were less regulations and less interference in the government in our personal lives and stopping all these wars, to me that isn't a sacrifice. I mean, it's just sort of come around to common sense. And fortunately, the American people are shifting the ideas. They're coming in this direction. They realize how serious it is. And the young people are leading the charge, and I like that too.
Thank you. Now, you did touch on the military interventions, and you are a veteran. You're in the Air Force. And given that experience and given your experience in foreign policy, what will you do to make sure that we have a strong national defense?
Well, the strong national defense is key. Defense of liberty is the main purpose, but strong national defense is part of that. And that is a precise function of the federal government. It was proscribed that the states aren't to be involved in having armies, to provide the national defense. I think our defenses are down when we spread ourselves so thinly around the world. We're in 130 countries, 900 bases. It's an economic burden for us. We have to remember a rather recent empire that bit the dust. It was the Soviet Empire. And they were so foolish, they went into Afghanistan and had a war, So it's an economic consequence of the foreign policy, but it also creates problems for us. I mean, how does having our troops all around the world actually defend us here? And more precisely, we've lost lives and a lot of money worrying about figuring out where the boundary is between Afghanistan and Pakistan is. At the same time, we don't even worry. We don't worry enough about our own borders around here. So I think our defense is diminished. What I'm proud of is the fact that the military have been very supportive of our campaign. When you look at the donations, we get over twice as much money from active military people than all the other candidates put together. And that means the military is looking at what I'm talking about, and they don't feel exactly excited about what's going on. It'd be nice to say that maybe they're turning the corner and we've come home from Iraq and that war is over, but I don't think I can report that to you. That's not my assessment. Yes, some troops came out, but the embassy is there, 17,000 contractors and State Department people will be in that embassy, and we're all around Iraq. We haven't changed our policy. So for having a strong national defense, we have to have a different policy. The policy should be designed to defend this country, not to pretend that we can police the world, and not that we can buy friends either by foreign aid or force them to be our friends by taking them over and bombing them and insisting or installing dictators. We've been doing it for a long time. It's not good for us. And so if we want a strong national defense, we have to change the policy. And the move right now is that since the Cold War ended, the declaration was that we have to spread our exceptionalism around the world. Therefore, we have this obligation to tell everybody to live like we do and have elections and do these things. The trouble is when they have the elections and they don't elect the people we want, we ignore them or we throw them out of office. And sometimes we still take for instance, this antagonizes, undermines our national defense when we support like Sharia-type dictators in Saudi Arabia. I mean, there's a lot of resentment for us from that. And if I happen to think our country is exceptional, but I don't believe if we are a good country and we have exceptional values, that you spread them either by bribing people or bombing people. We should set a good example where people would want to emulate us. We should have peace and prosperity and say, wait, the Americans are doing it right. Let's be more like Americans. That's the only way I think we can spread our exceptionalism.
Thank you. And one final question from me before we move to the audience is, how do you compare the European debt crisis to our own debt crisis?
Well, the European debt crisis is very, very dangerous, and they're going to have a climactic end before we will, but it's all intertwined. In 1971, the last link of our dollar to gold was severed. That was when the Bretton Woods Agreement broke down. It meant that we as Americans could print dollars as if they were gold, and the world unbelievably kept accepting them, and they still do. So we ship out dollars, and they put it in the bank like it were gold, and then they build their monetary system on our dollars. So all these years, we've had some benefit from this, where our best export is paper money. So we get cheap export in. The whole problem, though, is financially it's not a good deal because our jobs go overseas, too, because it's cheaper. It seems like a good deal, just print money and import products. But because they've propped up their currencies around the world, they're in big trouble. But the world is still trusting the dollar, and we're on the verge of bailing out Europe. The European Union's only been, the Euro's only been around for 10 years, and it looks like it's in big trouble. So Bernanke, the rest of them have promised we will bail them out, or like it was in 2008. If you don't bail out the banks and these bankrupt corporations, it'll be the end of the world. So that's what they do. They build up fear. They do that in foreign policy as well as economic policy to get people, frightful so that they go along with what they want to do. So right now, the course is that we'll bail out Europe. The only thing that will stop that, they'll continue to do that until they destroy the money. And confidence, when it's lost, whether it's in Europe or here. So if they pull it off where they can tide things over and we print in a couple more $1 trillion and bail out Europe, it just puts more and more pressure on us until finally the world will reject the dollar. Because if this could work forever, it means Americans wouldn't have to work again. We just print money, and let them take it. But that's not the way economics works. And even this past week, I was looking at how much foreigners are holding our debt. And whether it's a trend or not, I don't know, but there was a big drop in the amount of debt foreigners are holding this year. So that's what will happen. They'll finally quit buying our debt, and that will eventually push our interest rates up. But what's happening in Europe is very, very important right now, and it's trying to prop up a system that is unworkable. It cannot work, and it will end.
All right, thank you. At this time, we're going to open up the discussion to your questions. And again, we encourage questions to come from those of you who are undecided voters. So undecided voters, please, this is a great opportunity to ask your questions of Dr. Paul.
We'll start right here.
Okay.
Hi, Dr. Paul. Wait, turn it on. How funny.
It works better that way.
Hello, Dr. Sure? Okay. Hi, Dr. Paul. My name is Hannah. I personally, along with 25% of the country, do not identify with any particular religion. I understand you're for freedom of religion, and I support you greatly in that. Would you support any legislation that is religiously motivated but cannot be staunchly defended on secular reasons as well?
Probably depends on what you're talking to, because somebody might accuse you of saying that that you shouldn't murder somebody that's religious, you know. But any issue of violence, I think the government should be involved. But when it comes to regulations, no, there's nothing the government should be involved. The First Amendment is very, very clear. The Congress shall write no laws, you know, dealing with establishment of religion. But there shouldn't be any prohibitions either. And I use this a whole lot as an example of how we should look at civil liberties, because basically, in religion, we do a pretty good job. I mean, I'll bet there's a lot of different religious values in this room, and some who just don't want any, you know, particular religious values. And that's what we've been provided. We don't have to make those decisions. The government should make these decisions. But when they go, and we're pretty tolerant on what our intellectual lives should be about. We can read books, and even when communism was a real threat, we still had books on communism, and we didn't prevent people from doing it. But we rarely apply that same principle to personal lifestyles, personal habits, because they're afraid, well, some people's personal habits might not be good, and we have to watch them. They might drink too much or smoke too much and all these other things. So they don't give the people the same type of protection. But the federal government definitely should not be involved in regulating anything with religious values, and they shouldn't be involved in intellectual matters, but I don't think they should do it in personal habits either. And a lot of people say, oh, yeah, but they might go out and gamble, and this would be bad for the family and all this thing. But if you legalize something, if you legalize religious choices, that doesn't mean we endorse it. You know, I want everybody to make their own choices as long as they don't hurt other people. I don't endorse what they do with their religious freedom. But what you do with your personal liberties, with your own habits, I don't endorse what you do. And this is why freedom is so miraculous. It brings people together. All of a sudden, people who have different religious values, different intellectual interests, and different personal habits, people could come together, because what we want to protect is that principle of liberty. And that's what made our country great. But something happened along the way, because today you don't have a concise understanding of what freedom is about. Some people are a little bit better on personal liberties and religious liberties, and at the same time, another group will be better on economic liberties. But it should be one and the same. If you have a right to your life and you have a right to your liberties, you ought to defend personal liberties as equal, to economic liberties. And that is one of my goals, it's been trying to bring people together. But the federal government shouldn't be writing any laws on regulation of religious values.
Hi, Dr. Paul. I know you've said before that you would not use the executive order unless you absolutely had to. It's one of those things that you last resort. But I'm wondering, with all the unconstitutional laws and bills that have passed lately, would you consider using it to undo all the bad that they've done? Is it possible that you could... If not, is there some way out of this mess that you could do?
Believe me, there's a lot of authority that the president can do to unwind this. Take, for instance, the executive orders. They've been abused. The executive orders should be used properly for the president to do his prescribed duties. Like you write an executive order if you say it's time to bring the troops home. The president can do that. So you write an executive order, and that's okay. Now, any executive order that was written by a previous president, which is nothing more than legislation, yes, my belief is that I could write an executive order and cancel out that executive order. But you're happy about that. But also, how about the regulations the executive branch writes? Where did the executive branch get this privilege of writing law? So all regulations, as far as I'm concerned, are unconstitutional too. Only the Congress should write the law. If I don't like what they do, you veto it. So that's a pretty good start. And I would not endorse the principle of a signing statement. Presidents come along and say, well, this looks pretty good, but I'm going to sign this. I'm not going to follow this part. That's sort of a line item veto, which the president doesn't have. But what you do with those, if you think it's pretty good, but you don't want to endorse something that you consider bad, you should veto the bill. So, but there is a whole lot to do. On other times, you would have to, work with the Congress. But right there, that's a handful or a fistful. You'd have a lot of things that you could do using that executive power in a proper manner.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my question. I have a question about healthcare. 33% of children in the United States are on Medicaid, and another 10% are uninsured. And you have offered charity by doctors as a solution to this. Do you really think that 43% of America's children will be cared for through charity?
Through what?
Through charity.
Yes. Okay. She's asking about what I'm talking about, and there's so many people dependent on medical care, and I deal with that in the budget, and I also qualify it when I announce that I want to cut all the spending, but I want to preserve some programs. I would have priorities: the elderly, medical care for the children. But that doesn't mean that I thought it was a great idea, because this is why we're in a mess. Because Social Security has no money in the bank. So it's really going to take a lot of work cutting and working our way out of this. Now, when I got out of medical school in 1961, I practiced for a couple of years before there was Medicaid. I worked in a Catholic hospital and didn't make hardly any money. Nobody was turned away, and people were treated. And back in those days, people weren't laying in the street with no medical care. Doctors always charged the least. Now, with the government coming in with these programs that aren't, they're totally bankrupt, everybody charges the most. Everybody from the doctors to the labs to the hospitals. In Texas, you have a lot of illegal aliens come in. They have a baby. The babies immediately are put on the welfare rolls, and the parents then qualify. And because the hospitals need the money, because the costs are going up, it's just a real mess. And as far as I'm concerned, it's been created by the government. So I would try to work out of this, but I would want to transition. So some of you, if you see, this is not the way. I don't want to be totally dependent on the government. I want to really promote these medical savings accounts so people can, put their money aside and get it off their taxes and buy their own insurance and pay cash to the doctor. You need to get that doctor-patient relationship back again. But it is a problem because there is a dependency. But as the economy gets worse, that gets worse. If you took the food stamp issue, it wasn't too long ago I was using the number, well, there's 40 million people on food stamps now. And then later on I said, oh, no, somebody said it's 44. Last week somebody said, no, it's 46. So what we have created is a catch-22. The worse things get, and the more you need to spend, whether it's medical care or food stamps or whatever, and our country gets poorer. Our jobs are gone. We can't raise taxes. So the only thing is back to printing the money and borrowing the money. But it's not going to last. But I'm convinced we can do it, and we could work it out way. But I'm not overly confident in the way we're going. But I think the calamity is if we care about anybody, we have to avoid this major crisis where 2008 is going to look rather minor. And I think that's what we're moving toward. That's why in the world can't we agree on at least change our attitude about spending all this money overseas and try to take care of some of these problems at home?
But how will these children get care?
How would what?
How will these children get care? 43% of children.
You mean when? Right now, this minute?
Well,
you mean if you had a... Okay, I described up to having a transition, and they would be taken care of. Those funds in my budget takes care of them, so they're going to get care. But you're talking about when we have a free society, once again, how's it going to be taken care of? Well, why don't we look before how the country survived before 1965? Maybe it wouldn't cost so much. when I worked in the Cali Hospital in 1962, not that long ago, I worked for $3 an hour. When I got in my medical practice, my office call was $5 an hour. But now you pay more than that, don't you, to go see a doctor? You'd say you pay probably that much to park or something like that. But the cost goes up because the government's involved. When you destroy the value of money, prices go up more in the areas that the government gets involved in. They're very much involved in housing. Prices exploded, had to be a correction. They're very much involved in education. What has happened to the cost of education? Does the quality go up? No, the price skyrockets. Young people can't pay it, so we give them easy loans. So they graduate with $1 trillion worth of debt and no jobs. In medicine, it's very similar. The price goes up, and it's very difficult for it to happen, for people to make this. I know of the problem, but we have these legal problems where doctors overorder because of litigation. That's part of the problem. But it's really inflation and doing away with competition. We need more competition in medicine. When you have these medical programs, always wanting to help people, humanitarian instincts. So whether it's a Republican program for prescription health program, guess who does the lobbying? The drug companies and insurance companies. They run the show. So we get Obamacare. Who do you think came and lobbied? The drug company? So I am convinced, because I'm sure you have sincere humanitarian instincts, and your question reveals this. You want, how are we going to take care of people? But what I have come to the conclusion after studying free market Austrian economics, being in medicine and being in politics, if you're a humanitarian, you want to care about people, you better free up the system, but believe and understand how freedom works and sound money works, and how limited government will provide a lot more for people than doing it through the government. When a country destroys its currency, one of the characteristics is you wipe out the middle class. Money goes from the middle class to the wealthy. What is happening today? The middle class is getting smaller. The Wall Streeters are still getting their bailouts, and they have all the advantages of the monetary system because they get the money first. When they get the money, they have the value, they spend it and circulate it, then prices go up, but then you can't afford medical care. So I believe that one of the shortcomings of libertarianism and conservatism is we've never really expressed ourselves on this very point, because it sounds like, oh, you're cold-hearted, you don't care about people, the government's not going to take care of us. But who is the government? You know, if somebody here wants the government to take care of them, you're the government. You know, somebody has to go and shuffle the cards. But this is the wonderful thing about America. We've had the best experiment ever in the history of the world. The freest of markets, the largest middle class ever, the greatest prosperity. It's going down the tubes. If we're going to witness the disintegration of it, if we don't do something about it real soon.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Dr. Paul. With the death of the North Korean president, Dr. Paul, as a president, will you still remove our troops from the region?
I didn't hear your first sentence.
With the death of the North Korean president, Kim Jong-il, will you still remove the troops from South Korea?
Sure. I don't think the new guy is going to be any more ruthless. He didn't look like he had a whole lot of talent to me. So this looks like it might be a wonderful opportunity. The world is changing. They have a new leader up there. And, you know, the South Koreans have about, 10, 20 times the GDP of North Korea. What are we doing over there? Why don't we have those military personnel back here spending their money here in this country? No, I'd bring them home from South Korea. I'd bring them home from Japan. I'd bring them home from Germany and the Middle East. And we'd be stronger for it. Because great nations don't get defeated usually militarily. They get defeated by bad economic policies. And matter of fact, liberties are more destroyed by people's own governments more so than somebody invading. I fear the loss of my personal liberty more by the government than I do by somebody invading our country and all of a sudden starting to regulate us. So, you know, I'd bring them home. The sooner the better.
Dr. Paul. My question is regarding the Jones Act, which was created to protect cargo coming into and out of the United States and protect jobs for American sailors. And some view it as protectionism, but it has created essentially middle-class jobs. And we see across the board in other industries where IT jobs are getting shipped over to India, Pakistan, and you can list all kinds of jobs that have been shipped overseas. Do you support the Jones Act, and would you create something to, I guess, essentially shore up more jobs stateside for folks?
Right. Basically, without rereading the Jones Act and knowing every detail, I've dealt with it to a degree because I have Galveston in my district, and we have these ships coming in and out, and they complain about it all the time. Even though it was well intended to protect American jobs, it really backfires, a lot of unintended consequences. To me, it interferes with the marketplace. So unless there's something very, very special in there and necessary, I basically have had the position that I'd repeal most of it, if not all of it, because I think we'd be better off for that. But it was supposed to protect American jobs, but what it does, it chases a lot of vessels away, and they have to, it's very complicated. I can't remember exactly what happens, but if you're in one city, if you're in New Orleans, you can't stop in Galveston. So it undermines, and so what happened? The ships, a foreigner can do it, but an American ship can't do it, so they register overseas. It's a real mess. The market, it does not enhance the market, so I would be for repealing most of it, if not all of it.
Hi, Dr. Paul. So a couple of years ago, we had a really bad ice storm up here. And just around Halloween, we had another snowstorm. And I was without power for a while. And I really wondered why the power companies did absolutely nothing to do preventative maintenance to stop this ahead of time. And it wasn't until I talked with somebody who worked in the power industry, and they said, well, why would they do any preventative maintenance? Because what happens is we have a big storm, all the power lines go down, transformers explode, and then FEMA comes in and pays for new transformers and pays for all the overtime and everything. So the end result is we as taxpayers pay a lot of money, and we get a service that is actually worse off than had we not paid those tax dollars in the first place. So how do we get around, how do we stop this insanity? And, how do we fight against this when, your opponents are going to stand up and call you heartless, and, uninformed voters are going to stand up and say, Ron Paul does not care about ice storm people. and so how do we stop this?
Well, I thought I've heard all the stories about FEMA, but that's a new one. That's great. That's another great example. But I know a lot about FEMA from a practical viewpoint because I have 200 miles of coastline in Texas and Galveston, that area, and we get hurricanes quite frequently. And I was first elected to Congress in 1976, and I always argued against FEMA. Bad economic policies. If we have a hurricane, why do you have to pay me to rebuild my beach house? And also, what it does, people do things differently. Like you indicated there, why fix them when I'm going to get the government to do it? As if the government is magic. It's just some other neighbor in another state. But on the coast, what it gets you to do is, if you don't go along with FEMA insurance and the flood insurance, they say, well, you don't care, about the people and what's going to happen. Well, what would they do if you didn't have the government subsidizing their insurance? They say, well, we can't afford it. Well, what is that telling you? It's dangerous. So if it's dangerous and you're liable to have your house blown away, why should we dump it on the taxpayer? So we encourage people to build in the wrong places. So people who own property want to build there, they should do it. Say, I'll take a risk. I'll build my house a little bit better, or I'll pay more for my insurance. But instead, there's some people in Houston, I think they're trying to stop it. They've had their houses flooded 3-4 different times, and they come in and they rebuild them over and over again. It's just the unintended consequences when the government gets involved. But I eventually won this argument in my district because I take a very strong stand on it. I vote against it, but when the hurricane comes in and the program is there and we've had to pay into it, most of the complaints are about FEMA. So I go to bat for them because FEMA's holding things up. They can't get anything done. FEMA becomes the dictator. They come in and there was one flood where FEMA was keeping out the Red Cross. They wouldn't let the Red Cross come in. They take over, with the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA now, they take over all the police activities. Katrina was a disaster in what they did there. They went in and started confiscating guns. So no, there's no constitutional authority for the government to be doing this, no matter how well intended. It's not been around that long, and it teaches people to take risks they shouldn't take. And if you take a risk, you should be responsible for your risk. So interesting story. Glad to hear that one.
Hi, Dr. Paul. I like a lot of what you say, but I like a lot of what a lot of politicians say. So the question that I have for you is the question I have for every politician this year. How are you going to get Congress to work with you? I am so sick of bipartisan this and bipartisan that. If you belong to a party, how are you going to get Congress to do what you say we need to do?
I think it is the key. It is the key question. And I'm going to start off by saying something because I'm going to challenge you, but let me finish the story. My challenge is we got into this mess because we had too much bipartisanship. Because the right and the left get together and they want to spend money. Somebody wants a war over here and somebody wants all this welfare. So liberals and conservatives get together and they say, "Oh, well, we'll tax people and we'll borrow and we'll have this Federal Reserve. They'll print money and we'll get away with it for a long time." So they got together. I demonstrated in medicine. Republican Democrats, they let the lobbyists control them. So yes, they've been too much. But you're right, we still need a joint effort, a bipartisan effort. But I think it should be dealt not by getting them to come over by you giving half your promises away. Why don't we bring people together as coalitions? And this is where I have worked for so long because I'm pretty independent. That's why I sort of like New Hampshire. I understand there are a lot of independents in New Hampshire. Independence means that you can appeal to independents, you can appeal to liberals on civil liberties, and there's a lot of conservatives, but there's a lot of liberals who think that we do too much overseas. So you bring them together. Now, being elected president is also going to bring like-minded people in, so the attitudes will change. But the other thing that should encourage you, if we ever get to this point where you have the right kind of president, you need to bring people together, you can say, well, this is a secret. Don't let it out. Turn off the cameras. A lot of people in Washington don't have a whole lot of principles. But that's the way the world works. So therefore, they respond to you. If they think their job is in jeopardy by not, if they don't do what you want, and this is why, whether it's Occupy movement or Tea Party movement, that's a message they're starting to receive, and they're starting to sort it out. There's not enough there to bring about the changes. But so ultimately, government is a reflection of the people, and the people are a reflection of a prevailing attitude, a philosophic attitude. 70 years now, most all of us have been taught Keynesian economics, taught this idea that spending money is the most important thing, even if you're deeply in debt. So, but that is what is changing now. So you have to change people's attitudes. Congress will reflect that. But in the meantime, you want to work and bring coalitions together. And a president is vetoing bill. All you have to do is get buddies with a third of the Congress. to maintain your vetoes in order to do this, to cut back. But obviously it is a stalemate there because, like I started off with, they do not admit that spending is a problem. They're giving you lip service, but if they thought it was half or 1/10 as serious as I think it is, believe me, they would be cutting instead of this proposal and deception that they're panning off on the people.
This will have to be our last question. Can we get one from the back, someplace there? Anybody in the back have a question? I don't see one hand up back there. Maybe we're done.
Oh, you want me to go over there?
We need a mic.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Hello, Dr. Paul. My name's Alex, and one thing I've been following the news recently that's been kind of alarming me is this National Defense Authorization Act. I'd like to know some of your thoughts on it, and I would hope they'd be in line with my fear of this, please.
I'm always pleased to get questions like this because my complaint is this stuff goes through and nobody knows about it. So when somebody knows about it, and you know about it, I think that's fantastic. And it's out of self-defense. You better know about it because if you ask me, or they were asking me, or I saw in a paper about what the most important event of the 20th century was, or last year. Last year's the biggest news story. The biggest news story was bin Laden being killed. But I think what you're talking about is a much bigger story and represents a significant change. What he's talking about is the Defense Authorization Act. In the House, they were tinkering with the words that was signed into law after 9/11 to go after Al-Qaeda, people responsible for 9/11. I supported that. But that morphed into going after all terrorists around the world and invading countries. It was gross distortion of that authority. So instead, some of us wanted to eliminate the authority because bin Laden's got done and, they've abused it. But no, instead of that, they put in the House that they added it. They not only had the Al-Qaeda, they added the Taliban. And the Taliban are people not making plans to come here. The Taliban is mainly motivated to keep people out of their country. Matter of fact, our current government right now is starting to talk to the Taliban. So what was changed in the House was said that anybody, it was the Taliban plus associated forces. Associated forces mean that if you happen to visit a website that is controversial, or maybe attended a mosque or something like that, and somebody in that mosque was a bad guy, and you were associated, that you would be, subject to being arrested. But when the Senate got it, they said that they could be arrested by the military and taken in. And some of the senators on the House floor bragged, when we get one of those guys and they ask for a lawyer, just tell them, no lawyer for you. And these are just suspects. And this is on top of last February when the president announced that it's a national policy that the president's allowed to assassinate American citizens without a trial or charges made. And it's happened 3 times already. But people say, well, yeah, but that al-Awlaki, he was a bad guy. But what about his son, who was 16 years old? He was the second target. Oh, we didn't know he was so young. I mean, this is really, really bad. And it got passed this week. The Senate made it worse. It came back to the House, and there was no chance of stopping it. And the president was anxious to have it. No, that is major. It's very, very dangerous. We've essentially repealed our Bill of Rights, the Patriot Act, which I think should have never been passed. Repealed the Fourth Amendment. This essentially repeals the Fifth Amendment. This also. Freedom, the ideas of freedom developed slowly over many centuries. And they were trying to establish some of these principles with the Magna Carta in 1215. We're thrown out the window. So I'm glad you're interested, and I'm glad you know about it. I sure wish something more could have been done about it. Check and see how your representatives vote. That might not hurt anything.
Added in, and that Americans are exempt. That's what I had a letter.
Oh yeah, that's what they're using. But that is not true. Americans are not. They are.
I get it in writing.
But they said the president is no American citizens. No, this is designed for American citizens. They are not exempt. No, it includes American citizens.
Can congressmen lie?
I've heard of that happening. Now, you can't impeach him. You know, it's too bad that getting rid of and your turnover up here is rather easy to do. I wish it were that easy in Washington. It has to be the election. I mean, if they really get out of hand, you know, you can, Congress can throw a person out. But who are they going to throw out when they're all guilty? Not all, but...
Okay, folks, we're going to wrap this up, and we try to keep it as orderly as we possibly can, recognizing that there's a lot of supporters here. What we'd like to do, the congressman is going to be available for pictures, and we just want to do pictures tonight. No autographs. It's going to be 9 o'clock before we do get out of here. So folks that are interested in that are going to go straight through that exit door where we're going to have a rope line. Folks who want to bypass that can go to my right out that exit, all the way down the hallway, hang a right, and go down to that door to exit. Give us a chance to get to the back, please. Are
we going this way or around the side? Okay.
You wanted me to tell you guys that someone will take you to the back. Okay. Run.
Hey, Dr. Paul.
Good to see you. Then you can take pictures with him.
Oh, they're right here.
Yeah. 1 minute ago.
I got mom in my...
Oh, really? I'll keep that in mind. Go for it. Give it a whirl.
There he is. Good. I got to get to the line. I'm up the line.
Yeah. What'd you think?
Hey, how you doing? Hey, you guys did great tonight. Yeah, but you helped.
Register. Yeah. You're an independent.